Welcome to the UFO Enigma. Start your journey through the cosmos with epic adventures, heroic warriors, and alien civilizations. Subscribe now and explore with us. The wind howled fiercely across the frozen landscape as Patrick stood before the towering gates of Frostfire, the Leg Crystallos. HFY. The city of Crystallos was unlike a crystalline spires rose firm. Patrick adjusted his stance, his breath forming clouds of vapor in the freezing air. This was no ordinary city, and this was no ordinary negotiation. Before he could enter, there would be tests, trials of strength, endurance, and will. Nadara, the first blade of crystalline wood. Suddenly, the ground beneath Patrick seemed to shift, and a massive frost stalker appeared. Nadara appeared, her figure emerging from the shadows like a spirit. She was tall, her skin a pale hue of frosty blue, like the very ice that surrounded them. Her armor was made of the purest crystal, shimmering and reflecting the moonlight in dazzling arrays, like the very embodiment of the city itself. Her eyes, cold and calculating, met Patrick's with a challenge. Without a word, she raised her arm, the crystal spear in her hand glowing with an ethereal light, and pointed directly at him. There was no warning, no negotiation. This was the challenge. Prove your worth, human. Nadara's voice rang out, sharp as the ice around them. No one enters Frostfire without earning it. Patrick, though taken aback by her abruptness, felt a surge of adrenaline. His grip tightened on the hilt of his plasma sword, its energy blade humming softly as it came to life, casting a soft, blue light in. Then let's begin, Patrick. The asterisk arena was set of crystalline ice, so clear, and SMO. Nadara, agile as a shadow, moved first. In one fluid motion, she darted toward Patrick, her crystal spear cut in. Patrick was quick, his plasma sword raised just. Patrick. As the minutes passed, it became clear that neither would emerge victorious by force alone. They were evenly matched, Nadara with her speed, her finesse, and Patrick with his raw power and adaptability. They fought not just to win, but to understand each other, to prove that they were worthy of what lay ahead. And as their weapons clashed again, there was no winner in this battle, not in the way they had originally expected. But there was something far deeper between them now, a mutual respect. Both were warriors, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, each with their own battles to fight. But as the sounds of battle faded into the stillness of the arena, both warriors lowered their weapons, their breathing heavy but controlled. The cold night air seemed to grow warmer, the tension between them dissolving. Nadara met Patrick's gaze once more, her expression softer now, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "You are worthy," she said, her voice no longer as cold as the ice around them. Not just in strength, but in spirit. Patrick gave a slight nod, a genuine smile forming on his lips for the first time since he had arrived. The battle was over, but something had just begun. The air grew colder as Patrick descended deeper into the crystal caverns. The walls, glistening with an ethereal glow, seemed to pulse with a life of their own, as if the very crystals were alive, watching his every move. The cavern stretched endlessly, an intricate labyrinth of glittering crystal formations that twisted and turned in impossible angles. The paths ahead shimmered in soft blues, purples, and silvers, the light reflecting off the crystals in dazzling patterns that filled the entire space with an otherworldly glow. As Patrick ventured further, the silence was broken only by the soft, melodic hums that seemed to emanate from the very rocks around him. The crystals hummed in unison, their voices rising and falling in a strange, harmonious song. It was both beautiful and unsettling, as if the cavern itself were alive, guiding him or perhaps warning him. Every now and then, a low growl echoed through the tunnels. The crystal guardians, spectral beings shaped from solidified crystal, moved silently in the shadows, their glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. Patrick knew that these guardians weren't mere sentries, they were challenges of their own, requiring not just strength but intellect to pass. As the path ahead split into three, he was presented with an eerie puzzle. The walls were covered in intricate crystal carvings, each depicting strange symbols and patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. The humming grew louder here, as if it were trying to communicate something. The air felt heavy, pressing against his chest, as if the very weight of the cavern was trying to hold him in place. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the hum of the crystals sink deep into his consciousness. For a brief moment, everything seemed to go still. He reached out with his mind, focusing not on logic, but on the energy around him, the patterns, the feel of the vibrations beneath his feet. This was no ordinary maze, this was a test of his very soul. Trusting his instincts, Patrick stepped forward, allowing the crystal's song to guide him. He passed the first split, but the path ahead was more complex. As he advanced, the temperature dropped, and the glow of the crystals dimmed, leaving him in a near-complete darkness. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted, and a wall of sharp, jagged crystals rose from the floor, blocking his path. The air shimmered with static as the crystal guardians emerged, their forms flickering like ghosts. Their eyes burned with an icy blue fire, and their arms were raised, each one wielding a massive crystal weapon. Patrick knew he could fight his way through, but the task was not one of brute strength. He had to outthink the guardians, anticipate their movements and the very environment around him. He paused, analyzing the arrangement of crystals. The guardians moved in predictable patterns, but the terrain was unpredictable. The wall of crystals shifted slowly, ready to collapse at any moment. Patrick needed to use the environment to his advantage, using his mind to piece together the puzzle of shifting paths. With a deep breath, he stepped to the side, using the shadows to hide his movements. A crack in the wall revealed a faint light ahead, a pathway hidden from the guardian's watchful eyes. He moved swiftly but cautiously, the hum of the crystals guiding him like a beacon through the shifting labyrinth. As he navigated the maze, Patrick felt an inner calm wash over him. Logic and emotion blended together, his intellect was guiding him, but it was his feelings, his intuition, that led him to the answers. It was like fighting with Nadira, his mind needed to be clear, but his heart had to guide his actions. He realized that each step in the maze, each challenge, wasn't just about solving puzzles, it was about feeling the answers, understanding the rhythm of the world around him, and letting it flow through him. With every obstacle, every challenge, the crystalline labyrinth seemed to open up more, revealing hidden passageways that led deeper into the heart of the cavern. The further Patrick ventured, the more connected he became to the crystals, to the very heartbeat of the maze itself. His journey was no longer just a test of intellect but of endurance, both physical and mental. The labyrinth was testing his very soul, pushing him to his limits, asking him to trust not just in his mind, but in his instincts, his spirit. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of navigating through the maze, Patrick reached the final chamber, a vast open space, filled with towering crystal formations that sparkled in the dim light. At the center, a massive crystal pillar stood, its surface smooth and radiant, glowing with the same energy that had guided him through the maze. As he approached the pillar, the humming of the crystals grew louder, almost deafening. The crystal guardians appeared before him once again, but this time, they did not attack. Instead, they knelt before him, acknowledging his success. Patrick stood tall, breathing deeply, his heart pounding with the realization that he had passed the trial not through sheer force, but through patience, wisdom, and trust in himself. The pillar before him seemed to pulse with energy, and as he reached out to touch it, he understood he had not just survived the maze, he had become a part of it. He was one with the labyrinth, having learned the true meaning of endurance, not just surviving the test, but transcending it, embracing both logic and instinct in perfect harmony. Patrick stood alone on a vast crystal platform, suspended high above a chasm of endless frost. The ground beneath him was smooth and glass-like, reflecting the soft light from above, the surface shimmering with the ethereal glow of ice and starlight. The platform was surrounded by towering crystal spires, their sharp edges catching the moonlight in brilliant flashes. It was a place that felt both alien and ancient, as if it had existed long before the first stars were born. The air was cold and still, the silence so profound that every breath he took seemed to echo in the vast emptiness around him. Ahead, a massive frost stalker emerged from the shadows. The creature was colossal, its body made of solidified frost, rippling with immense strength. It was as if the ice itself had come to life, its eyes glowing with an unnatural blue fire, and its breath billowed in thick clouds of frost. The stalker's enormous paws made no sound as it stepped onto the platform, its massive frame looming over Patrick, casting a shadow that seemed to stretch across the entire expanse. Its eyes locked onto him, cold and calculating, as if it were assessing whether he was worthy of this final trial. The stalker let out a low growl that reverberated through the crystal floor, a deep rumbling that seemed to shake the very core of the platform. Its presence was overwhelming, a force of nature embodied in a living, breathing beast. Patrick's heart beat steadily in his chest as he stood firm, his gaze unwavering. This was not a test of strength, nor was it a battle of wits. It was a test of spirit, of inner resolve, a challenge to prove that he was not just physically capable but mentally and emotionally strong enough to bond with this ancient and powerful creature. The stalker began to circle him slowly, its glowing eyes never leaving his face. Patrick could feel the weight of its stare, the intense pressure building as the creature studied him, its every movement deliberate and measured. The ice beneath his feet seemed to hum with energy, as though it were alive, reacting to the presence of the stalker and Patrick's own emotions. With every step the frost stalker took, Patrick could feel the cold seep deeper into his bones, but it wasn't just the physical cold. It was as though the creature was testing the very core of his being, probing the depths of his heart and mind. He could feel a subtle pull, an invitation to connect, but the stalker was not offering it freely. It demanded trust, understanding, and a willingness to surrender his fear. Patrick took a slow breath, grounding himself in the stillness of the moment. He had faced many trials before, but none that had tested his spirit in this way. The stalker's growl reverberated in his chest, yet he did not flinch. Instead, he stood his ground, closing his eyes for a brief moment, allowing the cold to wash over him. He focused on the sensation, the raw power of the creature before him, and his mind cleared. His thoughts began to shift, moving away from the fear of the challenge and into a deep understanding of the frost stalker's essence. This creature, like the crystalline people, was not simply a force of destruction. It was a being of strength and purpose, a guardian of the ancient, a manifestation of the frozen spirit of Crystallos itself. Patrick extended his hand toward the creature, slowly and deliberately. He knew that this was the moment. The stalker's eyes flickered with a hint of recognition, as though it sensed his intent. The air around them seemed to grow colder, but not in an uncomfortable way. Instead, it was as though the entire space was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. The stalker stopped in its tracks, watching him closely. The massive beast was not moving toward him, but it was no longer a threat. It was waiting, just as Patrick was waiting. His heart slowed as he focused on the energy between them, the subtle connection that began to form. He could feel the cold, yes, but now it was different. It was no longer just ice. It was the essence of endurance, the embodiment of the land itself. The creature's breath became calmer, and Patrick could sense that the stalker was no longer assessing him. The challenge had shifted. It was no longer about strength, it was about harmony. Patrick's spirit resonated with the ancient pulse of the beast, and in that moment, he knew he had passed the test. Without warning, the frost stalker lowered its head, its glowing eyes now soft and steady. Patrick stepped forward, his heart full of purpose. As he extended his hand further, the creature nuzzled its massive head against his palm, its icy fur cool against his skin. The bond was made not through force, but through understanding, through shared strength, and through the connection of their spirits. A deep, resonating hum filled the air, the sound of crystal and ice vibrating in unison. Patrick felt the pulse of the creature's energy flood through him, its ancient power and wisdom mingling with his own. The platform beneath him seemed to brighten, and the cold that had once threatened to consume him now felt like a steady, guiding force, like a reminder of his endurance, his spirit, and his resolve. In that instant, Patrick knew he had proven himself not just worthy of the crystalline people, but worthy of his place among them. He wasn't just a man. He was a being of strength, of endurance, and of spirit, a warrior who could bond with the very soul of the planet itself. The frost stalker, the beast made of ice, had recognized him, not as an adversary, but as a true companion. As the bond between them solidified, the stalker stood tall, its presence no longer menacing, but protective. The platform's cold shimmered with the energy of their connection, an unspoken promise that Patrick had earned his place, not through power, but through the strength of his heart and the courage of his spirit. The crystal mountains stretched endlessly before them, their sharp peaks rising high into the sky, their surfaces sparkling like thousands of diamonds under the twin moons. Patrick and Nadira rode their frost stalkers, the mighty creatures moving with fluid grace across the icy landscape. The frost stalkers' powerful forms glided effortlessly over the treacherous terrain, their glowing blue eyes scanning the surroundings as they navigated through the towering crystalline spires. The air was thin and sharp, but there was a sense of peace that hung in the cold night, a quiet beauty that only the highest peaks could offer. As they ascended, the landscape seemed to change around them, the crystal forests becoming more dense and vivid, their branches shimmering in the moonlight, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. The sound of the frost stalker's paws crunching on the snow was the only sound in the still night. Patrick, his eyes fixed on the horizon, felt a strange connection to the world around him. The Frostfire city, once a distant and cold place of mystery, now seemed closer, more tangible, like it was waiting for their arrival, eagerly anticipating the union of two worlds. Nadira rode at his side, her crystal armor gleaming, her face serene yet fierce, as she too absorbed the sights before them. She had been his adversary, his guide, and now, she was his partner, their bond deepening with each passing moment, as if the trials they had faced together had etched their spirits into one. Their relationship was not just a meeting of two individuals, it was the merging of cultures, of histories, of worlds that had once been strangers but now shared something much more profound. The air grew colder as they reached the summit of the highest peak. Frostfire lay spread before. Patrick and Nadira dismounted from their frost stalkers, standing tall. Frost stalkers stood. Patrick stood beside her, his thoughts as clear as the sky above. The trials they had faced had forged a bond between them, but they had also forged something greater, a deeper understanding of each other's worlds. He reached out and placed his hand over hers, feeling the power of the mom. As they looked out over the vast city of Frostfire, Patrick. Together, they turned toward the horizon, the city's lights reflecting off the crystalline spires like 1,000 tiny stars. The mountains, the crystals, the frost stalkers, and the city Frostfire seemed to pulse. The wind. The Frostfire city, with its glowing crystal. Thank you for joining HFY Galactic Audiobooks on these thrilling cosmic adventures. While this journey may pause for now, new stories will return soon. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for being a part of our community exploring the universe. See you in the next great adventure.